They fired me on a Friday. No warning, no meeting, no eye contact. Just a cold email. From a man who didn't even know I owned the system his company runs on. Monday would be fun. My name is Ethan Creel, 38 years old system architect. Builder of quiet, invisible empires. For 9 years, I was the director of systems architecture at Salesforce based in San Francisco. Not the title that makes headlines, but the one that made sure the lights stayed on. I designed the back-end framework that powers over 82% of the company's operations. Customer portals, internal dashboards, data pipelines, API bridges, real-time reporting. I wrote it, I scaled it, and I patented it under my name. Signed, sealed, and buried in the fine print where no executive ever reads. Then came Travis Kendrick. New CEO, new suit, new vision, no clue. He walked into the Monday town hall like he owned gravity. "Call me Travis," he said. "I move fast. I like disruption. Let's make noise." Noise. The one thing people like him are good at. They shake the table without knowing who built it. By Wednesday, he fired 3 managers. By Thursday, he renamed all team meetings to vision syncs. By Friday, he walked into my office. Didn't knock, didn't sit. Just leaned on the doorframe like he was pitching a scene from Succession. "Ethan," he said, "you've been here a long time. Maybe too long. The company's evolving. We need people who move faster, think newer." Then he said it. "We're letting you go. Your role is redundant. HR has your exit package." He smiled. I didn't, because he had no idea. No idea I was the legal owner of the very system they depended on. No idea that Salesforce's license to use it expired in 3 days, and that I, Ethan Creel, was the only person who could renew it. I stood up slowly, packed my mug, my plant, a USB stick with nothing but photos from our last team retreat. No drama, just silence. That's how fear spreads in offices like this. Quiet, invisible, until it breaks the floor you're standing on. When I reached the parking garage, my hands were trembling. Not from sadness, not from anger, from focus. I didn't slam doors, I didn't call a lawyer. I just asked one question. How long until they realize what they've done? The answer, Monday. Friday night, I didn't drink. Didn't rage text friends. Didn't tell my sister. Didn't call my ex-wife even though I knew she'd say, "Told you. You gave that company too much." No, I wanted silence, not because I was broken, but because I was calculating. I walked through the Mission District, past neon ramen shops and shuttered bookstores. Each step cooled the heat in my chest. It wasn't about the job, it was about the insult, the ignorance. A man who didn't understand a single line of code decided I was redundant. He thought I was just another name in the org chart. He didn't know I was the chart. Saturday morning, I made coffee. Black, bitter, focused. Then I opened the drawer, the one I never touched unless I needed leverage. Inside, a copy of my contract, signed by the old CEO, sealed by legal, notarized. And right there, clear as code, clause 17b. All proprietary systems designed and patented by Ethan Creel remain under his personal ownership. Salesforce is licensed for use until the agreement's renewal. Renewal requires written consent by the patent holder. Date of expiration this Sunday, midnight. I laughed. A short, sharp breath. Not from joy, from precision. He fired me 48 hours before the system's license expired. Timing, poetic. At 3:12 p.m. I drafted an email. Subject notice of IP usage expiration. Immediate attention required. To legal@salesforce.com, CCCTO HR Director Travis Kendrick. Dear Salesforce Legal, this is a formal reminder that your license to operate the back-end system currently in use, patent ID US 973421C, designed and owned by Ethan Creel, will expire at 11:59 p.m. Sunday. Continued use beyond that point constitutes a breach of federal IP law. All updates, renewals, or escalations must be renegotiated with me directly as the legal patent holder. This is not a threat, it's a clause, one your executive team overlooked. Regards, Ethan Creel, patent owner, system architect. I hit send. Then I put on my sneakers and went for a run, 5 miles, no music, just my breath and the sound of my steps echoing between buildings I used to pass on my way to work. By Sunday morning, my phone started buzzing. Unknown number, voicemail, then HR. Hi Ethan, we just wanted to clarify something regarding your severance package. Then legal. Please call us as soon as possible. There may be a misunderstanding about your prior agreements. And finally, Travis. Subject line. Urgent contract miscommunication. I didn't open it. Not yet. Let them squirm. Let them sit in their beautiful glass building Monday morning and realize they don't own the floor beneath their feet. This wasn't revenge. This was alignment. Recognition, delivered not with noise but with precision. Monday was coming. And so was the silence that follows collapse. Monday, 8:07 a.m. The system failed. Not metaphorically, not in spirit, literally. Access denied. API errors, dashboard dead, clients locked out. The company that thought I was redundant just got locked out of its own heartbeat. I was already awake, coffee hot, phone fully charged, laptop open. I didn't need to guess what was coming. I had built it. Line by line, permission by permission. And they had ignored the one thing that matters in architecture: access expires. My inbox exploded. Urgent back-end authentication, failed clients cannot access dashboard. Ethan, please call me now. Travis Kendrick, let's talk. Nicole, an old friend from product, texted. Ethan, please tell me this is you. Max, Travis is losing it. Systems down. Clients furious. Board just got looped in. I smiled. Not from spite, from clarity. This wasn't sabotage. This was structure. This was what happened when people in power mistook noise for knowledge and arrogance for authority. At 8:31 a.m. my phone rang. Travis. I picked up. Ethan, we need to talk. His voice cracked just beneath the surface. The kind of panic you can't train out of a man. Look, he said. I didn't know about the patent situation. Let's work this out. Let's get you back in the office. I cut him off. Gently. Professionally. Travis, I'm happy to talk. But not about a job. We're discussing licensing now. As an external partner. Silence. Then that word he tried to fall back on. Let's not make this personal. I breathed. Calm, even. It's not personal, Travis. It's contractual. And then I hung up. 8:47 a.m. I got dressed, suit jacket, clean shirt, leather briefcase. Not because I missed the office. Because I was walking in as the solution. At 9:12 a.m. I stepped through the front doors of Salesforce HQ. Not the employee entrance, the front lobby. My shoes echoed across the marble floors. Eyes followed. Whispers flickered through the air like static. The receptionist blinked. Mr. Creel. I smiled. I have a meeting with legal. She nodded, hands slightly trembling as she picked up the phone. Take the elevator to the 7th floor. They're waiting for you. As the elevator doors closed, I caught my reflection in the mirrored panel. Composed, unbothered. But under it all, I was humming. Not with nerves, with purpose. They had fired me. But I was still the one with the keys. And today they were learning what that really meant. 9:18 a.m., 7th floor, legal conference room. 4 people were already seated when I walked in. General counsel, 2 legal associates, and someone I hadn't seen in years, a senior advisor from the old acquisition days. Smart man. Quiet eyes. He remembered me. Travis wasn't there. Good. This wasn't a Travis conversation anymore. This was a company conversation. And I was now an external party. Ethan, the general counsel, stood up. Thanks for coming. We want to resolve this amicably. Of course, I said. That's why I'm here. I took the far seat, the kind of seat where you don't defend. You define. He cleared his throat. We've reviewed your original licensing clause. Your claim is valid. Your system is covered by the patent. And yes, the license expired last night at midnight. He didn't blink. We'd like to propose a retroactive extension. 1 year. Same terms as before. I smiled, softly, not kindly. That won't work for me. A ripple. Not loud, just tight shifting in chairs. A pen stopped moving. "Excuse me," he asked. "I'm not returning to the same terms," I said calmly. "I'm here to renegotiate. Fairly." I placed a single page in front of them. Typed. Clean. Clear. $1.2 million for the next 12 months. License non-exclusive renewal quarterly technical support through me, or a team I approve. Credit public acknowledgement of system architecture credited to Ethan Creel, patent holder. Silence. Delicious. Then one of the younger associates said what they were all thinking. "That's a significant increase." "It's a reflection of value," I replied. "Something this company has forgotten how to measure." The general counsel leaned back, thinking. "We'll need to take this to the board." "I'll wait," I said. "But every hour you delay, your clients wait too. Trust, stability, stock trajectory. They don't wait." 10:03 a.m. I stepped out into the hallway. They stayed behind. Inside legal chaos, outside calm. But through the glass wall I saw him. Travis, pacing. He hadn't seen me yet. Then he did. And his face froze, then shifted. First confusion, then recognition. He walked toward me. Casual on the surface. But his stride was tight, calculated. "Ethan," he said, trying to smile. "Didn't expect to see you in person." "No, Travis," I said evenly. "You didn't expect a lot of things." "I think this has gone too far," he started. "We should have talked before legal got involved." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean before you fired me?" He swallowed, but kept going. "That decision was based on incomplete information." "No," I said. "That decision was based on ego. And now you're dealing with the consequences." He opened his mouth. I didn't give him the chance. "I'm not angry, Travis. I'm just done being underestimated." I stepped past him, but then paused. "Oh, and Travis?" He turned. "Good luck." That word again. Luck. He thought I needed it. But luck didn't build the system he ran on. I did. 10:47 a.m. Back inside the legal conference room. The air had changed. Tension. Caution, a low buzz under every breath. The legal team sat straighter, more alert. The board hadn't joined the meeting, but their shadow hung in the air. Every pause now had consequences. "We've reviewed your proposal," the general counsel began. "While we find the terms aggressive." "Accurate," I corrected. He paused, then nodded. "Accurate. We're prepared to accept the licensing rate with a caveat. 6-month contract, renewable quarterly. Public acknowledgement. But we'd prefer to phrase it as a technical collaboration rather than full patent credit." I leaned forward slowly, not hostile, just undeniable. "No." The word landed like steel on glass. "Excuse me," one associate blinked. "There's no collaboration. You don't collaborate with someone you fired without cause. You're running on architecture I built, signed and sealed." I let the silence breathe. Then, "I want it stated publicly and clearly. System designed and patented by Ethan Creel. No spin, no soft language." The room fell still. They weren't used to this kind of precision. Most people begged to come back, but I didn't want back in. I wanted the truth printed in black and white. "We'll take that to the board," the counsel said finally. "Good," I stood. "And while you're at it, I'd advise full transparency. The SEC doesn't take kindly to unreported licensing breaches, especially ones that cause system outages." They flinched. Not visibly, but enough. Because that wasn't a bluff. That was a bullet point in the rulebook they all feared. Outside the room, I found Nicole. She was standing near the elevators, arms crossed, watching the legal floor like a live feed. "They're calling you the firewall upstairs," she said with a half grin. "Better than being called redundant," I replied. She laughed, but her eyes were sharp, curious. "People are talking, Ethan. Travis is spinning the story. He told the board you never disclosed the licensing expiration." I nodded slowly. "That's a lie." "We know," she leaned in. "Everyone saw the memo. You CC'd legal. There's a paper trail longer than his ego." I didn't say much after that. I didn't have to. Truth doesn't shout. It sits quietly until the room turns toward it. The next morning, I wrote one more email. Not to Travis, not to legal, but directly to the board chair. I had his personal address from years ago, back when they actually knew who built the foundation beneath their billion-dollar tower. Subject: system licensing, leadership, conduct, and public statement. I didn't rant. I didn't beg. I laid out the facts. Date of termination. Date of license expiration. Travis's refusal to investigate infrastructure IP before removing its creator. And the false narrative he was now pushing. I ended with one question. If this is how he handles internal IP, how do you expect him to handle regulators, partners, or public shareholders? That afternoon I got the reply. Not from an assistant, not from legal. From the board liaison. Ethan, thank you for your clarity and professionalism. We are reviewing the full matter, including documentation you've provided. The board supports your proposed licensing terms and expects the deal to be finalized within 48 hours. We regret that your contributions were not recognized sooner. I read it twice. It wasn't an apology, but it was something else. A shift in the narrative, in the power. And Travis, he wasn't going to survive that shift. Wednesday, 9:00 a.m. The board met behind closed doors. Not a team sync, not a performance review, a reckoning. And by 9:23 a.m. I got the email. Not from legal, not from HR, not even from Travis. It came from the board chair himself. Subject: private session invitation. 11:00 a.m. today. The message was short, sharp. Your insight will be valuable to the ongoing discussion. That word again, valuable. 2 weeks ago, I was redundant. Now I was the architect they couldn't ignore. 10:55 a.m., I stepped into the boardroom. Not a developers meeting, not a strategy session. The executive boardroom. The one with the frosted glass and the $1,000,000 view. A room I'd entered only once before years ago, when the old CEO let me pitch a system upgrade. Back then I stood in the corner. Today I sat at the table, directly across from where Travis Kendrick now sat, still clinging to his title. He looked like a CEO on paper, tailored suit, polished cufflinks, phone face down like a chess piece he wasn't allowed to touch. But behind the veneer I saw it, sweat. The board chair opened with pleasantries. Formal, distant, controlled. Then he looked at me. Ethan, thank you for joining. We've reviewed your licensing terms and your documentation. We'd like to hear your perspective. Briefly. I nodded. Of course. I stood, held my notes, didn't read from them. I didn't need to. Leadership, I said, is not about control. It's about clarity. About knowing what powers your company, whether it's servers, code, or people. When someone new enters a system they don't understand, they have two choices. Listen, or bulldoze. Travis chose the latter. He flinched, slightly, but said nothing. He called me incompetent, fired me without review, then ignored the IP behind the system that keeps this company breathing. And only when the system failed, only when the lights went dark and clients began calling, did he start listening. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was weight. The kind you feel when something finally breaks through marble. Then one board member leaned forward. Ethan, what would you do if you were in his seat? I gave a faint smile. I wouldn't be in his seat. Pause. I'd be beside someone who understands culture, product, and legal. I'd build systems that protect people, not just profits. And I wouldn't wait for a lawsuit to start respecting the minds that built this company. The chair nodded, once. Thank you, Ethan. Please wait outside while we deliberate. I walked out, calm, steady. Not because I wasn't nervous, but because I had nothing left to prove. Through the glass, I saw it unravel. Travis's voice. Louder, sharper, blaming legal, blaming the CTO, even HR. The last move of a man who never built anything. Blame until it evaporates. But this time, it didn't. 11:47 a.m. The boardroom door opened. The chair stepped out. Ethan, we've concluded. Please step back in. I did. Travis was gone. Effective immediately, the chair said Travis Kendrick has been placed on administrative leave pending formal review. We'll be issuing a revised statement to staff. publicly recognizing your contribution to Salesforce's infrastructure and recovery. He handed me a printed draft. The first line read, "We acknowledge Ethan Creel's leadership, innovation, and intellectual property as vital to Salesforce's success." It hit harder than I expected, not because I needed applause, but because I knew most people like me never get it. "How would you like to proceed?" the chair asked. "The licensing is done," I said, "but I'll offer consulting, short term, on my terms, no full-time return." He nodded. "Consider it done." As I left the room, he said one more thing. "Ethan, you didn't just protect the system. You saved the company." I paused, then nodded. "I know." 2:03 p.m., Friday, the internal announcement went live. Not a memo, not a whisper, a digital thunderclap. Pushed through every Salesforce Slack workspace, inbox, bulletin board, and digital signage on every floor. Effective immediately, Travis Kendrick has been placed on administrative leave, pending a full investigation into recent management decisions, including termination procedures and contractual oversight. Salesforce formally acknowledges Ethan Creel as the architect of our core infrastructure. His patent and licensing terms are now part of our official operating agreement. We are grateful for his continued partnership and leadership through this transition. The message was clinical. But inside the company, it hit like a detonation. By the time I walked through the lobby, the fear I once felt in the halls had been replaced by something else. Respect. Quiet smiles. Subtle nods. A few whispered congrats from people who hadn't made eye contact with me in weeks. Not celebration, recognition. And for the first time, change. Monday, I walked back into legal, this time not as a problem, but as a proposal. I laid down a new framework. No tech jargon, just structure. Mandatory IP contract reviews during leadership transitions. Anonymous whistleblower protocols routed to the board, not management. A mentorship track for junior engineers focused on authorship credit and system boundaries. I wasn't there to gloat. I was there to install protections. Because I didn't want to just win. I wanted to leave something better behind. By the end of the week, the consulting deal was finalized. 90 days, my pace, my terms. Help stabilize the system, train the next lead architect, then walk out on my own 2 feet. People still asked, "Ethan, are you coming back full-time?" The answer never changed. No, because I loved the system. But the culture, that needed more than a rebuild. 2 weeks in, I stood outside HQ after a long meeting. Sunlight hitting the glass like a mirror. That's when I saw them, a group of interns walking by. One of them, a young woman with thick glasses and nervous eyes, stopped. "Are you Ethan Creel?" I nodded. Her face lit up. "I just wanted to say thank you. What you did, it's kind of legendary. We talk about it in the Slack channels. You made it okay for people to speak up." I smiled, not out of pride, out of something deeper. Legacy. "Then keep speaking up," I said. "Don't wait for permission." She nodded fast, then jogged to catch up with her group. And I was left with a feeling I hadn't expected. Not victory, not revenge. Peace. That weekend I left the city, took a train north, turned off my phone, watched trees blur past steel and sky. And for the first time in months, I didn't strategize. I exhaled. That night I opened a journal, first time in years. Wrote one line. I wasn't asking for power, I was asking for recognition. And when they couldn't give me a seat, I built my own table. Weeks passed. The fallout didn't end with the press release. It only started there. Inside Salesforce, a slow shift began to ripple. Small meetings started to include more listening. Exit interviews, once checkboxes, became serious data points. And people started asking questions. Real questions. Who signed off on Kendrick's decision to terminate IP holders without due diligence? Why wasn't this flagged during the leadership handoff? What other systems rely on individual creators without protection? The company didn't respond publicly, but I didn't need them to. Change doesn't always arrive with applause. Sometimes it shows up in policy. Travis Kendrick never came back. His leave became permanent. The final memo didn't mention vision. It mentioned irreconcilable leadership differences. Rumors surfaced, complaints buried under HR logs, terminations swept under the rug before mine. I wasn't the only one, but I was the last straw. I didn't chase justice. I built architecture, and architecture holds weight. Inside engineering, something shifted. Credit tracking was built into sprints. Code authorship now had visibility during demo days, and junior devs, they were finally told the truth. You have rights to your ideas. You have a name, and your name matters. Some executives tried to rewrite the narrative. Ethan was always part of the team. We valued his insight from day one. I didn't correct them. I didn't need to. Because every server, every process, every line of back-end code still carried my name. And now it showed. One morning, I received a handwritten letter. Yes, handwritten. From the board chair. Ethan, you didn't just protect Salesforce's infrastructure. You changed how we think about leadership. Not by shouting, but by standing firm. Thank you for showing us what real authority looks like. David, I kept it. Same drawer where I used to keep my severance papers. Funny how that drawer turned from endings into evidence. Now, I lead my own consulting firm. Selective clients, clear contracts, boundaries intact. I work with companies that don't want flashy executives. They want resilient systems and empowered people. I teach them what Salesforce didn't know they needed until I walked out. I still think about that Friday. Not because I was fired, but because it was the day I stopped trying to prove my worth to people who were never built to see it. It was a Thursday afternoon. Mid-spring, bright, quiet. I was leaving a client site in Palo Alto when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. But the area code told me everything. New York, big tech. Mr. Creel, I'm calling from Avira Data Systems. We were wondering if you might be available for a private consultation. We heard about what happened at Salesforce. I smiled to myself. Word had spread. Not because I had told it, but because I didn't need to. Truth travels faster than spin when you let silence do the talking. That weekend I gave my first public keynote. Small stage. Local tech forum. A crowd of junior developers, startup founders, and engineers who looked like they hadn't slept in days. And when I stepped up, no fanfare. No lights. Just a quiet room of people waiting to understand how someone like me had survived a system built to erase us. You don't need to wait for permission, I told them. To protect your work. To speak up when something feels off. To walk away when silence is mistaken for agreement. I built a back-end system that ran 82% of Salesforce's infrastructure. They fired me. Without reading the license, I wrote. And when the system failed, I didn't scream. I sent a contract. They listened, eyes wide, some smiling, some stunned, some angry not at me, at what they'd seen in their own teams, heard in their own one-on-ones, and never said aloud. The moment you let someone else define your worth, I said, you're already negotiating from behind. A young man in the second row raised his hand. But what if they don't care? About who wrote it? About credit? I nodded. Then document everything, and write your own clause. And if they still don't care, walk. Because power built on ignorance always collapses eventually. Just make sure you're not under the rubble when it does. That line made it into a clip. Someone uploaded it to TikTok, another to YouTube Shorts. It got passed around Slack channels across 3 time zones by Monday. Creel clause. Firewall energy. See, I'm not redundant. It wasn't viral in the flashy way, but in the way that sticks. The kind of impact that seeps into onboarding docs, into startup handbooks, into whispered conversations between interns who now say, get it in writing just like Creel did. I didn't ask for a platform. I just told the story exactly how it happened, and that turned out to be the most dangerous thing of all, being unshakably honest, on record, on principle. One night, a recruiter messaged me, would you ever consider returning to Salesforce as a CTO? I read it twice, and then I laughed, not out of arrogance, out of understanding. They were learning, slowly, but the lesson came too late. There's something people forget about systems. Especially the ones they build and use every day. They remember. Not just the data, not just the logs, But the fingerprints, the invisible signatures of every person who ever truly built something. Code is honest. It doesn't play politics. It doesn't go to networking mixers. It doesn't smile in meetings then gut you in performance reviews. It just works or doesn't, and when it breaks, it tells you who mattered. By early summer, Salesforce released a technical white paper. It outlined the new architecture enhancements post-disruption, revised integration protocols, updated system protection clauses, page 2 in bold, built on the original patented infrastructure designed by Ethan Creel. There it was. No more sanitized language, no more erasure. Nicole texted me when it dropped. Page 2. You're in ink finally. I didn't reply right away. I just sat there on a park bench watching the world go by and let it land. Years of back-end work, of invisible labor, of being overlooked because I wasn't the loudest person in the room. All of it now undeniable, not because I burned it down, but because I built it so well they couldn't fake their way forward without me. Later that week, I met with a venture firm. They wanted me to advise their startup portfolio on IP security and ethical leadership infrastructure. The meeting room was full of eager founders, most under 30, eyes burning with ideas and caffeine. One asked, "Ethan, what's the biggest mistake you think founders make with technical leadership?" I didn't hesitate. They assume the smartest person is the loudest one in the room. But real architects, they're quiet, intentional, watching everything. Another one leaned forward. "And how do we make sure we never end up like Salesforce?" I chuckled. Simple. Write a culture where no one can be fired without someone in the room asking, "Do we understand what they've built?" The room fell silent. Because they got it. That kind of silence isn't empty. It's full of realization. That month I published a framework, a free open source protocol called Credence. It wasn't software, it was structural. How to protect innovators in enterprise settings. How to codify authorship in collaborative code bases. How to structure leadership handoffs that prioritize continuity over ego. And inside the README file at the very bottom after the license terms, I left one simple note. Built from experience. Signed, the guy you tried to fire out of your own infrastructure. They didn't just remember my name now. They couldn't ignore it. Because the system still runs, still scales, still breathes on a framework I built with sweat, silence, and 42 lines of forgotten code. And now it remembers me. They rebuilt the dashboards, redesigned the homepage, swapped in new APIs. But they still ran on my bones. Salesforce had patched the system, but not the lesson. Because here's the truth. I wish more people understood. You can patch code. You can't patch respect. Respect is a decision, not a memo, not a workshop, not an all-hands meeting with a hashtag. It's the quiet architecture behind every sustainable company. And once it's broken, no update can truly fix it. I kept my distance, fulfilled my 90-day consulting agreement, on time, on scope, and I left without fanfare. No farewell cake, no group photo. Just a quiet handshake from legal and a final walkthrough of the system I'd once designed in a sleepless winter 6 years ago. They asked if I'd leave feedback. I did. 2 lines. Respect isn't earned when you need someone. It's shown before that moment ever arrives. The internal Slack channels started to shift. Not because I stayed, but because I left well. They watched what I did with grace. How I never torched the place. How I never posted a single name online. How I never fought fire with fire. Instead, I built systems that made their fire irrelevant. Nicole called me a week after I left. They're rolling out your Credence framework internally now. Like mandatory training. They even said your name in a product town hall. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to know the tone, or the context, or whether Travis's name came up next to mine, because none of it mattered anymore. The people who knew already knew, and the people who didn't, they were just using a system that wouldn't exist without me. A month later, I gave one final talk. Small auditorium, local tech college. A group of undergrads in hoodies and sneakers hungry for something real. I stood on stage, no slides, just voice. They'll tell you you're too quiet, too intense, too focused on the wrong things. But if you believe in what you've built, protect it. Because no one else will not at first. They'll fire you thinking you'll fold. But if you've got your name on the code, your hands in the architecture, and your facts straight, then they didn't fire you. They freed you. The audience clapped. Not loud, but long. Afterwards, a young woman approached me. Soft voice. Hard eyes. "I'm writing my thesis on IP and collaborative systems," she said. "Would you be willing to be cited?" I nodded. "Just spell the name right." She smiled, then paused. "I read about what happened. You didn't burn it all down. That took restraint." I looked her in the eye. "No," I said. "That took architecture. There's a line of code buried deep inside the old Salesforce architecture. Nothing flashy, just a comment. Tucked in the system's backbone behind layers of logic and security. Designed for resilience, EC. No one sees it during routine updates. But it's there. Permanent, undeniable. Like the truth. I never wanted revenge. I wanted clarity. Clarity about value. Clarity about recognition. Clarity about how easily people confuse power with purpose. What they gave me was a pink slip. What I gave them was a mirror. And what I got in return, not applause, not some redemption arc, but something real. Legacy. Months passed. Consulting projects rolled in from companies I'd once admired from afar. Not because they wanted me to fix their tech, but because they didn't want to become Salesforce in 2024. They wanted structure. How do we build credit into our culture? How do we spot ego-based decisions before they burn talent? Can you help us architect safety for our people? So I taught them, and I told my story exactly how it happened. No names changed, no facts softened, because too many stories like mine are whispered, or erased, or spun into something more convenient. Not this one. This one, it's written in contracts, in memos, in Slack threads and architecture logs, in keynote clips passed between interns who now CC legal before sprint reviews, in the minds of junior devs who know that their work deserves attribution, and in a system still running on the foundation they once called redundant. I journaled again last night, same notebook, same black ink, just 3 lines. They fired me without reading the clause. I answered without raising my voice. Now my name is part of their uptime guarantee. So if you're listening, if you've ever been passed over, overlooked, called difficult for simply knowing your worth, let me tell you what no one said to me back then. You don't need permission to protect yourself. You don't need to scream to be right. And when they act like your exit is the end, smile, because they've mistaken your walkout for your last word. I'm Ethan Creel. Architect, consultant, system firewall in human form. And I didn't just survive the system. I redesigned it.